The stage blinds. Cameras glide over faces like searchlights across a night sky. And in that flash, hope feels tangible. The investigator is not a hero or a judge, but a viewer who looks deeper. He doesn't come for a miracle, he comes for the truth of what happens after the thunder of applause. First in his file is Nightbird, Jane Marchevsky. On stage, she sounds quiet, as if saving every word, and then floods the hall with the phrase, "It's okay." Season 16, 2021, Simon Cowell's golden buzzer, but no victory. Illness forced her to leave before the live shows. Behind the curtain, oncology reports and forceful pauses between inhale and exhale. Age at death, 31. Date and cause, February 19th, 2022, cancer. The contrast between "it's okay" on stage and "not okay at all" in reality grates like a bad splice in the edit. The brighter the takeoff, the sharper the shadow. The investigator notes a first pattern. The show can turn fragility into a symbol of resilience, but it cannot cancel a diagnosis. Beside her is Brandon Rogers, a young ER doctor and singer, a man used to stopping other people's falls. His audition is a brief rest for the world. Steady tone, warm smile, the judge's approval. Season 12, 2017, no victory. He never reached the live shows. On June 10, 2017, there was a car accident. Age 29. Television, unable to stop reality, does what it can. It airs the performance posthumously. The applause sounds like an echo, beautiful but late. In the edit bay, you can rebuild the scene and heighten reactions, but you can't return breath. An unfinished feeling remains. The song exists, the singer does not. The investigator notes a strange kinetics of events. Television timing can replay the past, but it can't change the outcome. Two stories, two sides of one medallion. One is about hope singing on the edge. The other is about a life no one got to finish hearing. Both shine on the screen, and both cut off too quickly. The air pressure shifts from uplifting rise to viscous anxiety, where silence sounds louder than music. And here is the first coincidence, almost invisible to the eye. The steeper the rise, the deeper the backstage drop. It isn't proof yet, only the shadow of a pattern. Before the investigator unfolds a map strewn with bright points from the stage and dark sinkholes off camera. Some facts are named precisely: season, age, cause. Others look wiped away. In that silence is an invitation to the next step. If the stage offers promises, who removes the details after the final bow, and why? Chapter 2. The Web of Silence, when the cause isn't named. Silence is editing too. It cuts away the excess, softens sharp edges, and leaves just enough for the picture not to fall apart. The investigator learns to listen to the pauses between statements, the blanks between posts, the sparse lines of official obituaries. That is where the real pulse of the story beats. First in this chapter is Zori Craig. He's remembered as half of the Craig Lewis Band, whose harmonies in Season 10, 2015, lifted the room like a tide lifts light boats. Then came the finals, thunderous ovations, a short path to theater projects and collaborations on Tyler Perry's stage, where music and drama fuse into a single action. But 7 years later, in October 2022, a post arrives that knocks the air out of the room. Zori Craig has died at 44. And then, a wall. The cause of death is not publicly disclosed. Some sources are cautious, others verbose, yet all run into the same thing: an empty space in the why box. The investigator listens to this silence and feels it sounding louder than any officially confirmed. In an industry measured by clips, air dates, and box office, a track suddenly remains without a verse. Please provide documentation, but none appears. That doesn't make it easier for fans, colleagues, or those used to filing causes and effects into tidy boxes. A different kind of anxiety appears, not from a tragic detail, but from its absence. He opens the next folder more carefully, as if a shock might come from under the lid. Scott Alexander, the illusionist, of Season 6, 2011. On stage, he worked like an engineer of silence. Big routines without shouting, where disappearances looked everyday, almost gentle. Years pass. Touring life, sea routes, stages that come and go as quickly as harbor lights at night. Then the notice. February 2023, age 52, stroke. It happened while he was working on a cruise ship. He died later without regaining consciousness. The facts seem clear. The diagnosis is named, the time stamped. But the investigator sees something else, logistical white gaps. Between he fell ill on board and he died, there are only a few lines. Where exactly did it happen? How long was it from the first symptom to a doctor's arrival? How many hours burned up in approvals, in transport, in what reports call operational circumstances? An illusionist who once controlled attention finds himself trapped in other people's schedules. Maritime, medical, bureaucratic. And here, disappearance is no trick, but an unalterable procedure. Two stories, two forms of silence. With Zori, silence about the cause. With Scott, silence about the details. The first leaves room for versions that multiply like reflections in a mirror. Health, overwork, chance. The second is built from technical omissions, time lags, and phrasing that fits a human life into one line after a comma. In both cases, anxiety moves in waves. It rises when the viewer feels the lack of an answer, and eases slightly when at least the outline of events appears. But the easing is deceptive. Another ridge of questions follows. The investigator notes a repetition, and not a fact, a rhythm. Peak, pause, brief clarity, pause again. This sine wave appears too often in press releases, interviews, scraps of posts from friends and producers. And if you overlay the calendar of performances, rehearsals, flights, and contractual windows, a dangerous zone of turbulence emerges on the map. Dates when no one is allowed to cancel the show, and everything else cancels itself. He marks these points in red and sees how they lie across other people's biographies like channel markers. When silence becomes the rule, versions begin to live in place of facts. To break that circle, one has to go deeper, to where every voice has its price and every step onto the stage has its own risk counter. Chapter 3. The price of a voice, contracts, schedules, and pills. The industry loves precise words: window, slot, deadline. A voice lives differently. It strengthens, it cracks, it depends on sleep, water, and silence. The investigator opens the file where a manager's calendar collides with an artist's biology. First, Nolan Neal. On stage, he smiled as if he'd reached shore after a long swim. His path had two milestones: The Voice first, then America's Got Talent, Season 15, 2020. He came with his own song, a confession of weakness and an attempt to pull himself out of quicksand by the hair. He didn't win AGT, but a moment of recognition happened. The audience saw someone who didn't hide the broken places. Then came the dates everyone knows. July 18th, 2022, age 41, cause of death per the coroner, acute combined drug toxicity. The investigator doesn't dwell on the phrase. He treats it like a road sign. An overdose is not an event in a vacuum. It's almost always an intersection of several trajectories. Concerts, flights, slow sleepless nights, and quick solutions that promise the body a pause. But a pause bought with a pill becomes a debt trap. Tomorrow there's another audition, meeting, session, broadcast. While fans write, "Stay strong" and "We're with you," the contractual machine is already placing a new date on the calendar. The voice becomes a Geiger counter. The higher the stress, the faster the clicks of alarm. Next folder, Skylar Hicks, a girl with a guitar who could turn a whisper into a song at her audition. America's Got Talent, Season 8, 2013. Still a teenager, yet already a songwriter, already on stage, already hearing applause. There was no win, but there was the illusion of a clear path. Just one more step, and everything would come together. In reality, ruptures. A growing girl is suddenly handed an adult frame of expectations. Be online, be reachable, be ready. Then a lull, sparse updates, short headlines, and a final line. December 6th, 2021, age 23. Media report a possible overdose. The investigator recognizes the pattern. When the spotlight switches off, quiet troubles become invisible. Youth rarely admits limits. The industry almost never does. Between them, a narrow bridge appears, one you must cross without a right to stumble. This chapter isn't about weak character or moralizing. It's about mismatched tempos. The show demands acceleration. One more verse, one more take, one more city. The body demands breaking. Sleep, water, doctor, silence. When breaking isn't allowed, it gets faked. A pharmacological pause, a compromise that postpones the bill until tomorrow. The counter ticks, and one day, the hands meet. The investigator notes the wave pattern, and that matters. First, a sharp spike of anxiety. Diagnosis, date, age. Then, a brief shelf of empathy. Voices of loved ones, letters from fans. Then, another rise when it becomes clear. The systemic pattern repeats. He isn't calling it a law yet. He calls it a rhythm. Pressure, urgency, emergency fixes. The vacuum after applause. If even admitting weakness on stage doesn't save you, what does? The answer will have to be sought among those who seem protected by their laurels. Chapter 4. Victory as a final burden. Victory is fanfares, flashes, and colored ribbons. But it is also a weight on the chest that changes one's breathing. The investigator opens a folder bluntly labeled Winners and watches titles turn into burdens. First, Neil E. Boyd, a baritone whose smile led people through a storm. He won AGT's Season 3, 2008, a rare case of an opera singer taking a mass-market show by the sheer force of a human voice. After the finale came schedules, tours, promises, meetings, a life where applause works like caffeine. But the body does not obey calendars. June 10, 2018 brings breaking news. Neil Boyd has died at 42. Cause: combined heart and kidney failure, complicated by liver disease. The coroner's report sounds cold, yet between the lines you can feel the fatigue. A man who spun at high speed for too long. A pattern emerges. The louder the victory chord, the more carefully one must protect the silence after it. And the industry offers very little of that. Next folder, Liz Agnes, born Claire Frances Marie Alder, the timbral wave that sent electricity down viewers' spines. She moved through the show like a ballads heroine. Season 6, 2011 finalist, top 10. Her Dream On sounded like a dare to her own fear. Then a long aftertaste, rare mentions, local work, family life, and suddenly a brief, restrained line. On February 8, 2024, she died at 40. Obituaries list dates, warm words from loved ones, the community's remembrance. The cause of death is not publicly disclosed. Here, silence isn't emptiness. It's a closed door you don't bang on. Sometimes the most honest act is to name the limits of what we know, rather than trade facts for guesses. And yet, anxiety grows precisely because of what's unsaid, as if the final verse were carried off by the wind. 2 victories, 2 finales, and 2 different ways to vanish from the frame. Boyd is a documented diagnosis, almost a textbook of vulnerabilities. Weight, stress, the body's organs negotiating with a relentless schedule. Liss is a soft shadow, not cut into details. In both cases, the weight of laurels is palpable. A winner receives not only the stage, but also obligations that are hard to reconcile with human physiology. The triumphant drum roll the audience hears can turn for the artist into a metronome that measures out an exhausting rhythm. The wave of anxiety rises and settles on a high plateau. For the first time, the audience feels the scale. Title as magnifying glass, not armor, amplifying every risk. And then, a brief shaft of light. Archival footage where Boyd laughs and Liss holds a long note as if giving the world time to breathe. A reminder that behind statistics stands a life that wanted to be lived. If laurels don't protect, where do we find real lifelines? Chapter 5. Fragile Hope: Why We Tell This Story. The finale isn't a period, but a quiet corridor where footsteps sound especially loud. The investigator walks it slowly, checking what remains after the applause. Not ratings or numbers, but human traces. He knows anxiety shouldn't be the goal. Its task is to lead to a place where hope stops being a prop. First, he opens a warm, almost sunlit folder. Ray Jessel, a composer with a mischievous smile. He seemed to step onto the show from an old jazz club, where the piano knows every guest by name. America's Got Talent, Season 9, 2014. There was no win, nor was that the point. He brought a rare feeling to the stage, mature freedom. His signature cheeky audition song went viral in the kindest way. The laughter in the hall was warm, not sarcastic. On July 21, 2015, he passed away at age 85. Cause: natural death. There's no puzzle in these lines, and that's exactly why this story needs them. Not every stage is a trap. Not every ending is a shot to the nerves. Sometimes a show is a way to live the last lap with music, not with silence. The investigator makes a pencil note. Even in an industry of acceleration, a soft landing is possible. But truth doesn't tolerate halftones. He brings back the one who began this journey, Nightbird, Jane Marchevsky, Season 16, 2021, a golden buzzer, no win because illness forced her to leave. February 19, 2022, age 31, cancer. Her song It's Okay became an elixir before she was gone. And that elixir isn't a slogan, but a map out of the maze. Vulnerability spoken aloud turns into a bridge between stage and audience. The investigator lays out what can be carried away from this inquiry. First, behind the glitter, always look for the rhythm, where the peak is and where the pause is, and who controls an artist's silence. Second, distinguish kinds of silence, about the cause and about the details. One breeds rumors, the other hides systemic failures. Third, remember the price of a pharmacological pause, when a pill and a schedule are offered instead of rest. He doesn't write morals, but he does offer practice, for the industry and for the viewer. For the industry, put not only performance slots into contracts, but slots of silence, mandatory recovery periods, psychological support, transparent medical protocols for touring conditions. For the viewer, support not only the takeoffs, but the backline web, charities that aid artists, attention to warning signs, normalization of the right to pause without fear of falling out of the pack. Because a like isn't always help, while the silence one can return to and sleep in is often a life ring. Chapter 6. The Cost of Talent. A talent show is a big shared celebration. For viewers, it gives something simple and important, the feeling that a miracle can happen here and now. We watch an ordinary person step onto the stage, sing or perform, and suddenly the whole hall rises to its feet. In those moments, people at home feel part of something common: family, city, country. Generations that rarely talk to each other end up discussing the same broadcast. Grandmother, grandchild, parents. These programs also open doors to worlds that rarely reach television. A classical aria, tap, folk dance, illusion. Suddenly they are close by, without pretense, clear and alive. For artists, it is first of all acceleration. Minutes on air replace years on small stages. A personal audience appears, offers for film and concerts arrive, new connections form.
Even without winning, a contestant keeps a performance they can show to a producer or promoter, a ready calling card. The quick reaction from the crowd and judges also helps to understand what works and what doesn't. But acceleration has a price. Production runs on a strict schedule: late-night shoots, early call times, flights, and rehearsals. Proper sleep and rest are usually the first to go. Then comes publicity, constant comparisons, online comments, expectations no one can meet every day. For some, this whirlpool becomes too heavy. The most painful stories arise where exhaustion and stress meet the urge to hold out at any cost until the next show. Contracts are not always fair either. A newcomer has little leverage, signs what is offered, and later runs into restrictions and penalties. And then there is editing. In 1 minute of airtime, it is hard to tell a whole life, so the viewer often sees a beautiful legend, while the difficult parts stay off-screen. When tragedy happens later, those gaps get filled with guesses, and that breeds even more anxiety. This can be fixed without losing spectacle. Start with a sane tempo. Contestants need guaranteed rest, clear recovery windows with no rehearsals after flights, and the ability to say stop without fear of punishment. There should be a doctor and a psychologist on site, available not just on paper, but for real at any time. It helps to have someone independent of the producers, an ombudsman of sorts, who watches over safety and can intervene if something goes wrong. Contracts should be transparent. How long exclusivity lasts, what the limits are, what insurance is provided, and what support an artist gets if they fall ill or hit a rough patch. This does not ruin the show. On the contrary, it makes it fairer and more stable. Managers and labels need to plan workloads with the understanding that voice and body are not machines. After 2 heavy days, at least 1 day for recovery is necessary. It is better to talk in advance about stress, dependency risks, and ways to help than to fight the consequences later. Mentorship helps newcomers a lot. Alumni from past seasons who have been through it and can share simple but crucial advice. Digital platforms have a role too. When a pylon starts around a contestant, algorithms should not push it further. Filters, reporting tools, and fast responses should work. In their dashboards, artists should see not only views at any price, but calmer metrics. How long people watch, what good things they say, and where real support comes from. Finally, much depends on us, the viewers. We can vote not only on show night, but support the artist afterward. Go to a concert, buy the music, follow their pages, help funds that provide psychological and medical aid to creative people. And it's important to remember a simple truth. A 1-minute TV story is a plot, not a life. If we refuse to take part in harassment, if we can show compassion instead of judgment, we already reduce someone's pain. Talent shows create rare moments of real unity. To keep those moments from turning into human breakdowns, we need a bit of discipline, a bit of care, and a little more transparency. Then the stage will remain a place where hope sounds loud, and offstage, everyone will have the right to silence and recovery.